Okay, so I'd like to give a perspective on mobile, okay, and I'm happy to take questions, during or after. It's kind of an intimate room here. So kind of a story, and I'll do a few slides, and I'll give a few ideas, and then I'll also do a demo, okay, and hopefully it'll make it real. So mobile has changed. Mobile has changed how IT thinks about, how enterprises think about IT, because in three different ways. The first one is that the user experience is central. Okay, so everybody and one of us have been in IT for a long time. The enterprise used to think about itself first. Now it has to think about the user experience. And that's very much driven because these mobile devices, right, are just beautiful, efficient experiences from a consumer perspective, and the enterprise has to live in the same way. The second thing is the line of business in the enterprise wants to be able to choose the applications that it needs to let people do their jobs where the job needs to be done. Okay? And you can see the vendor community reacting. Salesforce and Dropbox and SAP and Oracle all have applications that are purpose-built for the mobile devices, and they're easy to use. Okay? The third part is the enterprise. So we talked about user and line of business. The enterprise still has to reconcile its security and manageability and cost, right, with those other two things, which is making the end user, the employee, work out, and also the line of business being able to do their jobs. And so we've come up with kind of a recipe for talking about how to balance all of those things, and we call it the 3 C's of BYOD, or the 3 C's of mobility, and that is container, connectivity, and compliance. And I'll spend a few minutes talking about each of those. So the first one is kind of a story, right, from a customer of ours. They're an insurance agency. And they came and they said, this is what we want to do on a mobile device, right? We want to be able to, if the agent has to go to a site, to a house for a claim, a tree fell in your backyard, or a car accident, the agent might want to use Salesforce to be able to know where to go to. They'll use maps to navigate, okay? They'll take a camera of the incident. They might use a custom application to file the claim. They might mail the customer a copy of the claim, and then they may file the claim within their repository, right? And if you notice here, all of these apps are kind of public apps written by vendors, and they're stitched together by sharing data from one app to the other, okay? One of these may be a custom app, right? So the enterprise wants to mix and match apps that are publicly available with apps that are custom written, and these apps together form a workflow. Now, none of this workflow should be shared with personal activity on the same device. And when we talked to the insurance agency, they actually said, you didn't get all of the examples right. They like to use the device to measure and to level things. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife, a tool. And so there's this long tail of applications that fit into workflows. And you don't want the enterprise's security and manageability concerns to outweigh the utility of the device, or to limit the utility of the device. So what you want from here is, from the line of business's perspective, it should be any application. And from the employee's perspective, it should be a true native experience, because these apps are designed to be easy to use. Okay? The next one, so how do you make this work out? What you do is what I said, the 3 C's of bring your own device, or 3 C's of mobility. And we call this container, connectivity, and compliance. And the way to think about this is, in this world of mobile, bring your own device is kind of overused a little bit. Okay? Bring your own device means you may want to use your personal device for business, or you might want to have a mix of business apps and personal apps on the same device. But regardless of how much personal use you get out of the device, the enterprise needs to put a circle around its apps and its data and focus on securing that. And what we've seen in IT across the board is there's been a movement away from managing the device to managing apps and data. And in fact, it's even bleeding back over into the PC and Mac world. People don't want to be in the systems management business for PCs and Macs. They want to manage the enterprise footprint on those devices. So a container is this space on a device where the aggregate of all the enterprise apps run, and they run isolated from personal apps on the same device, and the enterprise can focus on managing its data, which is the crown jewels of the enterprise, and also respect the privacy of the employee when he does other work on the device. The second one is connectivity. Some of those apps, all those apps will require some sort of internet connectivity. Some of those may have to go to cloud services, and some of those may have to go back to the data center. And you probably have a VPN in place that connects remote users into the data center. And the question is how do you connect the apps that are allowed to use a VPN into the data center leveraging that existing VPN, right? And the end user shouldn't have to worry about any of this. None of this should matter. The end user should click on SharePoint in the container, and it'll automatically use the VPN if that's appropriate. But if he clicks on Angry Birds outside of the container, it should never have access to the VPN. Finally, compliance. Compliance is the balancing of the health of the device, the restrictions that you may place on the device as a whole, and limitations on the end user, okay, with the security goals of the enterprise. And what you want to do is you want to place as few restrictions on the end user's personal use of the device. If he wants to put apps on it, it should be okay. What you want to be able to say is the device up to date? Okay, that right. Does it have the security updates that you need? Is the device rooted or jailbroken? Okay, are you only allowed to install apps from trusted places? Okay, typically the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store are safe. So the idea is put as few restrictions on the device itself so the user still has his flexibility, but enough restrictions that you get the security that you need for the container and for the enterprise apps and data. Let me go through this a little bit in detail. So the first one is a container. A container provides data security for iOS or for Android across all platforms for any app that you choose to put in the container, regardless if they're prepackaged from SAP or Oracle or Microsoft or Salesforce, or if they're custom apps that the enterprise write. We've seen the world shift. It used to be all custom apps. Now it's almost all prepackaged apps. Okay, and I'm assuming there's a variety of experiences in the room. Finally, you want to support any device. On the iOS world, it's pretty clean. There's only a couple models, and most people update their OSs pretty soon. Android is very fragmented, so everybody's probably heard Android L is coming out over the next couple of weeks, but it's still a 30% KitKat world, where KitKat is a year old, and it's still a 50% Jelly Bean world, right, where this is 2 to 4 years old. Okay, so Android's a very fragmented ecosystem, and what you want to be able to look at is I want to make sure apps will work across all devices, and my security and management platform will work across all devices, iOS, Android, and all flavors of those. Okay, connectivity. You may have SharePoint on the device. You already have an infrastructure in your data center with different data center-based applications. You may have a VPN from some vendor. The container should automatically let the apps that need to use the VPN be able to get to the data center, and the user shouldn't have to think about it. Okay, he should log into the container and everything should be exposed. Same thing happens for cloud-based applications. The connectivity should be intelligent and either route it through the data center if that's your policy or go direct. Finally, compliance is the ability to oversee this connection so devices that were compromised in some fashion can't get access to back-end resources. So for instance, if a device is jailbroken, you might say you've lost the right to get into the back-end. If there's a security update that the user didn't put on the device, then maybe he should lose access until you've remediated, which is typically easy. You just press update on the device. And again, this is recognizing that the world of endpoint management has changed from centralized management and centralized distribution of OS updates to the end user being responsible for it. And we'll see more and more of this across PCs. So compliance is very limited restrictions on the device that still let the user be able to do the rest of the things that he wants to do without putting risk on enterprise data. Okay, finally, this all has to be wrapped up behind a user experience that's really clean for the end user, for the employees, but also a management experience that scales. And if you look on a console here, what you probably see in most management consoles today, they're not so much device-focused, but they're app-focused. Here's the apps that this employee needs because of the multiple roles he has in the enterprise. Every employee gets email, contacts, calendar. Some employees will get a browser. Marketing employees will get Facebook. Salespeople get Salesforce. And you get the aggregate of the applications that are relevant based on the aggregate of your roles within the enterprise. What's really important about this is the VPN was used automatically and transparently, so the user didn't have to think. And liberating these corporate resources to be able to expose more than email to any user on any device is kind of the goal, right? Because you want to stop thinking about mobility and you want to start thinking about how you use applications and enabling productivity. Thank you.